We're just a minute or so away from former New York Governor George Pataki making his remarks. Then again tomorrow, 3 more candidates at the fair. The morning we have Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. He's up at 11 Eastern. And in the afternoon, Carly Fiorina at 1 o'clock. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham at 4. And we have live coverage of all of it right here on C-SPAN.
I'll call Washington, tell them to report. Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Hey Dave, it's Kylan. How are you? Do you guys see my thumbnails on HRM 55?
Yeah. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Des Moines Register's Political Soapbox. I'm Carol Hunter, News Director at the Register. Our next speaker is Governor George Pataki of New York. Governor Pataki first was elected to public office as the mayor of Peekskill, New York. He served in his state's assembly and senate, and then was elected 3 times to be governor of New York. Governor Pataki, welcome to the Soapbox stage.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, and thank you all for being here and suffering out in the sun this afternoon. It's a little hot, but I'm only going to talk for an hour and a half, so don't worry about it. Now, I'll try to be as brief as I can because this crowd looks like you have some real questions. And let me begin with a question of my own that you're probably asking. There are going to be 18 people on this soapbox during this state fair. So the question is, why Pataki? Why another one? We have a parade of candidates. Well, let me tell you something. I understand that, but I honestly think my background is vastly different from anybody else in this race, and my vision for what we can do as a country is different because of that background. You know, I'm from New York, but I don't have a plane. I have 3 tractors. And in fact, I was out on a tractor last week moving hay. I'm the only candidate in this entire race in either party who actually was born and raised on a farm in my hometown of Peekskill, New York, lived on a farm most of my life, and I'm still working with my wife, our family farm in upstate New York today. Now, you say, all right, that sounds great, but what does it mean? Any of you live on a farm or work on a farm or grow up on a farm? I see some out there. You know what it does? It teaches you values. And one of the things you learn early on in a farm is words don't matter. If you say you're going to do something, it doesn't mean a thing unless you go and do it. It doesn't matter what you say you're going to do. It doesn't matter what you claim credit for having done. The only thing that matters is what you actually do. You learn that on a farm. Because if you cut corners, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, it comes back to bite you. And there's no getting around ultimately doing the job well. Now talk to the candidates who are running for president. You're going to hear a lot of good words. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the other thing. But how many of you feel like I do, that it seems that regardless of who gets elected, the government gets bigger, the taxes get higher, the regulatory burden gets greater, and it seems that Washington becomes more and more removed from people not just in Iowa, but in communities across America. That is their government. It is not our government. And we have to take that government back. So when I say that I'm going to do something like reduce the size of the federal workforce by 15%, cut regulations, throw out a corrupt tax code that serves only the interests of the lobbyists and the powerful and the special interests and lower the rates for everyone, there are others who may say that too. But let me tell you something, I did it. And I did it as a conservative Republican in the state of New York, one of the deepest blue states in America, with 3 million more Democrats than Republicans. You know, I say I'm going to reduce the workforce by 15% in Washington. I did that in New York State. Throw out a tax code that serves the powerful and lower the rates on working families and small businesses and Americans across the board. I did that in New York. I lowered taxes by $143 billion, more than the other 49 states combined. Get people off dependency on government and give them the opportunity to be independent and live the American dream and get on the employment rolls instead of the welfare rolls. You're going to hear that from a lot of people. Well, I did it. And when I left in New York State governor, We had had over 1 million fewer people on welfare than when I took office, because we did transfer people from the welfare rolls to the employment rolls, and we had almost 700,000 more private sector jobs. And by the way, my state assembly, I'm a conservative Republican. There are 103 Democrats and 47 Republicans in that state assembly. I had to convince Democratic legislators, many of them from New York City, many of them very liberal, to give our policies a chance. Their policies were failing. We were last in jobs, last in taxes, and over 1 million people on welfare. And I said, give my policies a chance. If they don't work, I'll get thrown out and you can go back to your ways that didn't work. They gave me the chance, and we changed New York State in just 2 other ways. Thank you. 2 other ways we did that. When I took office, we were the most dangerous state in America. When I left, we were the 4th safest state in America. Only a handful of states like Iowa were safer than we were, and I was able to convince Democratic legislators to support my conservative, tough on crime policies. So I'm going to change Washington, reduce its power, reduce the influence of the special interests and those who can afford to have a lobbyist roaming the halls of Washington, and give the power back to you, the people, in Iowa and across this country. And I know I can do it because I did it in New York. Now, the second thing in my background that is unique, and it's something that is with me every day, is I was governor of New York on September 11th. I felt the horror. I knew victims. When I was leading New York through its recovery on that day with Rudy Giuliani and George Bush, I felt the flames and could taste the air. And I vowed then that this country, so long as I had anything to say about it, was never going to bow down to radical Islam again. We were never going to forget the lesson of September 11th. That lesson to me is clearer today than it's ever been. We thought before September 11th, because Al-Qaeda was overseas, an ocean, a continent, tens of thousands of miles away, it didn't pose a threat to us in New York. We paid a horrible cost, a horrible penalty for not realizing the threat they posed to us in America. Today, ISIS poses as large a threat, if not greater, to America, not just cities like New York, but communities across America. And we have got to stand up and defeat radical Islam over there before they can attack us here. And thank you. And let me just give you 2 examples. Think what happened in this country in the last few months. Garland, Texas, an American radicalized by another American in the name of jihad would have killed dozens of innocent American citizens but for a Texas cop. Think of what happened in Chattanooga, Tennessee. An American radicalized by jihadists killed our Marine recruiters before he was finally killed. We have got to shut down ISIS or any radical Islamic group's ability to recruit, to radicalize, or to proclaim and urge jihad anywhere in the United States, regardless of where that message comes from. You know, I'm a great believer in the First Amendment. Freedom of speech matters. But you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You cannot tell a fellow American to kill your other Americans in the name of jihad. That's not protected speech. That is a crime, and they have to be shut down and arrested, whether they're preaching it on the internet, in our prisons, or from the mosques in this state. We have to protect America's freedom. And by the way, the response of this administration to our Marine recruiters being shot was for them to take off their uniforms. America is not going to bow down when I'm president to radical Islam anywhere in the world, and certainly not in the United States. Our Marine recruiters shouldn't be taking off their uniforms. They should be putting on their guns, and we will be a lot safer across this country. But it's not just enough to ignore the fact that ISIS has recruiting centers, training centers, planning hubs, hundreds of millions of dollars, sophisticated weapons, social network capability, and thousands of people with Western passports. We have got to destroy their training centers and planning centers over there before they have a chance to attack us here again. And let me tell you what I do. First, directly aid the boots on the ground, which this administration is not doing. The Kurdish army is fighting ISIS, but they're not getting the supplies, the training, the financing, and the help they deserve from us. I will provide aid directly to those Kurds. The Sunni sheiks in Anbar don't like ISIS. They'd like to fight them, but they can't get any help from Baghdad, and this administration doesn't send any aid directly to them. I would do that as President of the United States. We would ramp up our bombing efforts to destroy those planning and recruiting centers. And if need be, I would send in American special ops to destroy those recruiting centers, those planning hubs, those places where they are organizing to attack us here, destroy them, kill them there, and get out before they have the chance to attack us here. Now, let me say, I don't say this lightly. I don't want a 10-year war. I don't want $1 trillion spent trying to create a democracy in a part of the world where not one hasn't existed. I have 2 sons. My older son, when he graduated from college, became a Marine officer and served as a lieutenant for a year in Anbar in Iraq. My younger son, after college, became a lieutenant and served in the 10th Mountain Division and got back from Afghanistan last September. I know what it's like for a parent to lie awake at night, worried about getting a phone call you pray never comes when your loved ones are in harm's way. But I also know what it's like to see the chaos and devastation of an attack like September 11th occur right here in America, and we can never let that happen again. We will prevent ISIS from attacking us here, whatever it takes, but we will not risk one American life unnecessarily. So I started out by saying you're going to hear a lot of candidates. They're all going to talk about, I'll do this, I'll do that. Ask them, how are they going to do it? Have they done it? And what is their vision as to how they're going to protect America in the 21st century? I have had a privilege of leading one of the great states of America, the state of New York, for 12 years. I got elected as a Republican conservative 3 times. I'm the only person ever in the history of New York State to run and win as both a Republican candidate and a Conservative Party candidate. I got reelected by the 2 largest majorities ever for a Republican in the history of New York State. And that's a state where in the last 93 years, there have only been 2 other Republicans elected, period. And they were both liberal Republicans. I can win this election. I can change Washington. I can change America and bring Americans together. I did it in New York. I will do it in Washington. We are one America. We stand together. There's nothing we can't accomplish. And whether it's here in Iowa or anywhere in America, we should believe, and it should be true, that the 21st century is one of unlimited opportunity and the greatest century America has ever had. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. And if we have any time, I'm happy to try to answer a question. Yes, ma'am. Hey, she said, thank you for putting up with the Iowa sun. And as a Democrat, actually, Harry Truman said, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And I'm trying to get into the kitchen, so the heat doesn't bother me, but go ahead. Yeah. Yep. Let me repeat that. Nancy is an educator here in Iowa, and she loves all the kids of Iowa and pointed out how her statistic is 41% of kids in Iowa today are growing up poor, and how education has always been the great equalizer. I can tell you that's true for me, and it's something I care about greatly. You know, my father was a mailman. When he went off to the 1st grade, he couldn't speak a word of English. And my mother had a scholarship to go to Cornell, but she had to turn it down because she was the only one in her family working, and she was supporting her parents and her brother and sisters. So they didn't see themselves as victims. And when my father went to 1st grade, his teachers didn't see him as someone, oh, he can't speak English, we'll put him aside. They saw him as someone who they could teach and help live the American dream. And he lived to see one son become an astrophysicist and the other son become the governor of New York, in significant part because we got great education. So what we have to do, though, is end the monopoly system. And you're a teacher, and you're going to get mad at me. But too often, particularly in minority communities, in low-income communities, we have teachers who can't teach, we have schools that can't educate, and we trap children, poor children, children from poor families in schools that we know are going to fail them in their desire to get the education that will allow them to lift themselves up to opportunity. So when I was governor of New York, one of the other things I did was I got in place the strongest charter school bill in America, where parents could have an alternative within the public system to take that child out and give them the chance to have a different experience where they could learn. And those charter schools, by and large, are thriving and improving education across New York State and now across America. But we have to hold teachers responsible, just as you are in every other profession. And I would go further. I would say to a low-income parent, if your child is trapped in a government school, where that school year after year fails to educate those children, we're going to give you the opportunity to pick another school or pick another benefit for that child, because we don't want that child left behind. That's part of the equation to lift people out of poverty. The other is to have a stronger economy. And the biggest impediment to the American economy today is not the American worker. It's not the American entrepreneur. We have the best workforce, the most willing to risk entrepreneurs. Every one of you out here, I'm sure at one point has been thinking, hey, I could open a little store. I could have a small business on the side. And then you go to fill out the paperwork, and the regulatory burdens are so high you say, forget it. Or if you do succeed, you get things like Obamacare that say if you hire another employee, we're going to penalize you up the wazoo. So you give up or you don't grow. One of the things I did as governor when I left is we had the lowest unemployment rate since they started keeping records in the state of New York. And that's because we lowered the tax burden, we repealed thousands of regulations, we got government out of the way, we empowered the American people, and the dream came real. And just one other thing, you know, Iowa's a great ag state, but it's also a great manufacturing state. There are a lot of people in this country who think, well, we're not going to make things in America anymore. I don't believe that. One of my tax reforms, throwing out that code and lowering the rates for all Americans, I would put in place the lowest tax rate on manufacturing in the developed world. We have that workforce, thank you. We have that workforce. We have energy prices that are coming down. We have the capitalists and the investors willing to put money behind things. What we don't have is a government that empowers freedom instead of inspiring fear. I get elected, we will have that government, and we will have those jobs. So thank you. Yes, sir.
I like your message.
Thank you. By the way, what's that on your hat there? I can't. All right, a United States Marine, and let me just say, this country produces no finer men and women than those who put on the uniform to protect our freedom. To you and all of you, raise your hands. God bless you. We're proud of every single one of you. Thank you.
What I would like you specifically to start saying when you talk to us is leave out the I word too much, except when you're saying, I know how to build a team.
Right.
Because
yep. And that's exactly right.
you can by yourself,
yep.
You don't know how to build a team.
That's exactly right. Did you all hear that? Absolutely right. What he said is that, you know, he loves the message, but when you talk about, I'm going to do this, no individual can do it by yourself. You got to have a team. And that is exactly right. And I'm glad you raised that point, because one of the reasons I was so successful as governor of New York, and I used I again, so forgive me, is because we created the best team in America. I couldn't sit there. We created that. It was a great team. Now, there you can tell that's a Marine, because they know that you don't do it by yourself, and you don't. So yes, we can do this, and I hope I said at the end, that we as Americans can accomplish anything, and we can make this the greatest century America has ever had. But first, we have to reclaim our government and get it out of our lives and out of our way. Is that better? All right. Thank you. Yep.
Shut down 2 mental health facilities and put these consultants out of the street. We see it across the United States. Mental health budgets are getting cut.
Martha was like, let's get a picture.
Explain while people are going in,
shooting up in theaters, malls, and every place else in our street corners. What can we, you and the president and your cabinet do to stop cutting mental health?
Okay, all right. Did you all hear that question?
He was critical of Governor Branstad's cuts to mental health in Iowa, and what can we do to change that briefly? First of all, let me say, I think Governor Branstad is a terrific governor and one of the finest governors this country has had. And by the way, he was governor before I got elected, and he's still governor long after I served. He's going to this fall set the record for longest serving governor in American history. So I think he's been doing something right. He cares about Iowans, and specific items and specific budgets, you know, I can't comment on, but I love Governor Branstad. But on mental health, it is something where, first of all, I'm going to digress a little bit, because to me, when I think of mental health, I think of how this government is failing our veterans. And it's in all types of health, in particular mental health. And one of the roles the government has, and I believe in very limited government, is to provide a safety net for those who can't take advantage of America's opportunities. And certainly, no one deserves that safety net more than America's veterans. And we are letting them down, and I would do two things. First of all, any veteran who has served, they're not going to wait in line to see if they can get services at a VA system. We're going to give them a card where they can go to any health facility in America that they need to get the care and the treatment they need. And we're going to make sure that they get the mental health support. The vast majority of them don't need it. They come back stronger and better. But for those who do, it is the federal government and the president's role to make sure they get the mental health support and counseling they need. And just to digress a little bit more, you know, we're seeing horrible incidents of gun violence in America. And you'll see, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. In almost every one of those incidents, it was someone who was mentally ill, and others knew that he posed a threat of violence to himself or others, and we didn't do anything. We don't need to change the gun laws. We need to change the mental health laws so we can protect ourselves from those who are clearly violently mentally ill. And let me tell you, one of the laws I changed in New York after a horrible incident is I got the state legislature to pass a law allowing New York State to put in a secure mental health facility violently ill, mentally health people, even against their wishes, when we had a panel of experts say it was necessary to protect them and to protect society. That is a role the federal government could play, to make sure that we protect the people from those horrible incidents, not by taking away people's guns, but by protecting us from those who are clearly violently mentally ill.
And not taking away
Yes.
your benefits.
I'm sorry, yes. One last question, I'm sorry. I'm having a great time. Four of those Vietnam that we lost? That is a very interesting idea. Let me repeat it. What he said is, you go to the Vietnam War, as I have done many times, and I have too many friends there, and you see the names, but you don't know the story of what they actually did and what their lives were. And that is something that touches me, because if you go to Ground Zero today and see the memorial, which I'm so proud of because it really shows the magnitude of the loss and the courage of the response, and then go down to the museum. We have every single person who died in those horrible attacks, their picture. And you push their picture, and it tells their story. And I think that is a terrific idea, to honor those who lost their lives to protecting us in Vietnam and in other wars. And if I and my team have the opportunity to lead this country, that is just going to be one more symbol of the respect we are going to show to veterans, not just those here today, but those who have served or lost their lives and their families in the past. So I'm being cut off. I'll tell you, this was great fun. I'm going to be here again tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock. It won't be as hot. Come back. No, I can't do that, but let me just thank the Des Moines Register for having me. Thank you all for being here. This should be a time when we feel the most optimistic, the most positive, the most excited about our future. And if we get the right leadership, we will. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. That was
Governor Jennifer King. Jennifer King.
I worked once yesterday. It's crazy. I've been doing this to myself every day. So you ended up making it out to the
Governor George Pataki on a 90-degree day at the Iowa State Fair in Des Moines on the Des Moines Register's Candidate Soapbox. We're back again tomorrow right here at the fair with 3 more candidates. We hear in the morning from Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. That's 11 o'clock Eastern Time. The afternoon, it's Carly Fiorina at 1 o'clock Eastern, and then South Carolina's Lindsey Graham at 4 p.m. Our live coverage will continue throughout the day tomorrow on C-SPAN. We're going to go back to the Iowa Fair right now. There's a little indoor setup where the candidates come and answer some reporters' questions after they've spoken on the soapbox. So our live coverage continuing here on C-SPAN.
I thought I was done with the hot seat. Where are you at?
Right here, actually. And then
You don't have no place to tell, but
you think we would be unfair, right? This is, could you put the
Sure.
microphone on for me?
Sure.
Perfect.
I can't spin it around. Okay.
That's perfect.
Not quite perfect. That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Paige, go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Paige Godwin. I'm
Paige,
the Register. I was just wondering, you mentioned outside that you grew up on a farm,
Yeah.
and I was wondering how you can use that to connect Iowa voters and what is the most important issue facing farmers today?
You know, yeah, I did grow up on a farm and spent my whole life on a farm. And in fact, we're running our farm now, and every Saturday we take some of our grass-fed beef down to one of the farmers markets. And it's just a way of life that really taught me values, the value of hard work and the value of having, you know, it doesn't matter what you say, what matters is what you do. And I think one of the largest problems facing farmers today is the tremendous fluctuation in prices, whether it's corn or wheat or soybeans. You know, the market can fluctuate greatly. And the best thing to do about that is to open up and expand markets to new technologies, to new possibilities, and to new countries. And then the other thing, of course, as we experienced when I was a kid, is we'd have a great peach crop looming in the Hudson Valley, and then you get a hurricane or a hailstorm, and what looked like it was going to be a good year became a terrible year. So crop insurance, because of the vagaries of nature, and you just have to understand that that's something that, as much as farmers would like to be able to be proactive, you can't protect against a natural disaster.
Okay. And what do you think of the state fair so far? What are you planning on
You know,
doing?
I've been here 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
And I've seen the butter cow, and I've been to all the different shops, not this year yet, but in prior years. And I'm certainly going to go see the pork shed and hopefully do some grilling and eating, and then just make the rounds and say hi to as many people as possible.
Okay. And then I was reading reading a Wall Street Journal interview with you from July, and in it you mentioned that if you could just get some attention against some of the other candidates, you think that you would win. And if you could get your message out, is there any message that you feel like you haven't been able to get out at yet, or something?
Yeah, it's that this is serious business. You know, it seems like so much of politics is kind of entertainment. You know, who's going to land in a helicopter, whether or not somebody's going to be indicted, who's going to insult who else, and how you can fit things into a 30-second soundbite. But leading the United States of America is a real job, and what we need is someone who has the vision as well as the experience of having led successfully. You know, we don't need theater in politics. We need grown-up government, and I know that I have the ability to deliver that, as well as, you know, right now politicians always seem to try to win by dividing people, by demonizing the other side. I won by bringing people together, and that's what I want to do in Washington, is not run a partisan, narrow government, but run an American government where we solve problems together. And the last Republican president to do that was Ronald Reagan, because he had Tip O'Neill as his speaker, and he had to work in a bipartisan way. I know that. I will do that.
Okay. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
Okay.
Governor.
Good. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, as you were just questioning me about. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good
Thanks.
to see you.
Can I get that microphone back?
Oh, no, I was going to keep, you know, it might be more interesting for you if I kept it on. You never know. It could have gone back to politics as entertainment.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you all. Thank you. Sure.
And a reminder, we're back at the Iowa State Fair with all its food on sticks tomorrow at 11 a.m. We're going to re-air and show you again this evening Ben Carson and George Pataki starting about 9 o'clock Eastern. Right now, let's bring you our Newsmakers program with former Minnesota Governor and 2012 presidential candidate Tim Pawlenty.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.